Another unpleasant day on Wall Street. The Dow and Nasdaq both finished in bear territory, and oil, for the umpteenth time lately, hit a record high. General Motors shares sunk after Merrill Lynch said the venerable car maker could face bankruptcy if the industry doesn't bounce back soon. Starbucks is closing stores and cutting jobs as $4 gas replaces $4 lattes as the consumer's drink of choice. And even the Oracle of Omaha has hit hard times, so to speak. Warren Buffett's Berkshire Hathaway stock had its worst first-half performance since 1990. Is America's business greatness under siege? Our next guest says don't bet on it. He's former Republican presidential candidate Ron Paul, who joins me on the phone from Lake Jackson, Texas. Congressman Paul, thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Good to be with you.
During your run for the presidency, you were extremely critical of President Bush and the Congress as it pertains to the economy. So why should Americans feel better now?
Well, right now, I'm not sure they should unless we do the right things. Although I have been critical of the administration and the Congress for doing the wrong things, I also talk a whole lot about the Federal Reserve System because all the malinvestment and the excessive debt and the problems that we face comes from how the Federal Reserve manipulates interest rates. So if we don't deal with the Federal Reserve, you can't understand the bubbles, and we can't understand the need for the collapsing of these bubbles and the liquidation of this debt, which we're in the middle of. I think we're really not quite even in the middle. We're probably at the beginning of a huge dollar bubble that's been going on since the Bretton Woods broke down in 1971.
Congressman Paul, a lot of longtime proponents of capitalism says that this sort of thing is what's known as creative destruction. In other words, big companies eventually get stale, stagnant, or whatever, and they die, and new ones replace them but get even bigger. You don't see that happening at this time?
Well, no, and I don't think there's anything destructive about capitalism. I think there's destruction when we manipulate capitalism and when we have the government too much involved and overregulate and overtax, artificial wages, artificial interest rates. Yes, then we have a lot of problems. But capitalism should function much better. I think there are times when if you did have free market capitalism, there would be companies that would get old and lazy and they'd have to move out. But the consumer is the king in capitalism. If the consumer doesn't get a good deal, they put these businesses out of businesses. The companies get put out of business. But today, if anybody gets into trouble, we bail them out. And you're not allowed to have capitalism and allow the consumer to make the decision on which businesses survive or not.
During your run for the White House, you became a cult figure amongst many folks because of your radical ideas. One is to repeal the 16th Amendment and to abolish income tax. How would that help the economy?
Well, of course, it's strange that that's a radical idea. That sort of was conventional wisdom for 130 years, and the founders thought it was a pretty good idea. Well, immediately it would put 40% of all this tax revenue that the government has and wasting and back into the pockets of the American people. Instead of running a $1 trillion empire around the world, that $1 trillion would be spent back here at home. The salaries of all the military people would be spending their money here at home. And, of course, the inflation is hitting us because of our monetary policy, but the inflationary pressure on our oil prices is also due to the fact that right now the greatest anticipation is the war against Iran. Right now it's not so much when. I heard a discussion the other day, it was dumbfounded me. It said, well, do you think we're going to bomb Iran before the election or after the election? It's like a foregone conclusion. Then they wonder why oil prices go up $2 and $3 a day. I mean, this would all be gone if we didn't have this foreign policy, domestic spending policy, and we could get rid of the income tax. It would be a godsend. I mean, we would be so much wealthier and we wouldn't have any inflation.
But Congressman Paul, do you think that there'd be greater stability if we let Iran have nuclear weapons and for militant groups like the Taliban and Al-Qaeda just to run amok in the Middle East?
Well, there's no evidence that they have it. Our CIA said they haven't been working on it since 2003. And we lived through the Cold War, and the Soviets had 40,000. Pakistan has them, India has them, Israel has them, China has them. So, I mean, it's pretty a natural thing for somebody who's surrounded by nukes might want to have a defense. But they're not even working on it. They've been inspected 9 times in the last year, unannounced by the United Nations, and they've never been found to be in violation. So I think this is a lot of hype. But no, I just assume they not have a weapon. But I think the biggest incentive to give them a weapon is surrounding them and threatening. Right now, the threat is that we're going to blockade the whole country. I mean, this is an act of war we're threatening them with right now.
Congressman Paul, thank you very much, and also congratulations on your book.
Thank you very much.